Hey, alright, I got my foot up on the gas. It's the Joe Q Car Show podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Joe Q Car Show. I'm Joe, and here today with me we have Mike Maghiar, comedian and also Instagram creator of Death Star News. I am so happy to have you on, Mike. Mike, what are you driving right now?
Well, first off, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. And right now I live in New York City, so I'm actually not driving anything. The MTA is my car right now.
So you're just packed in there just with everybody. Public transit, from somebody who is a car aficionado, we'll say, how does that feel? Do you feel like something's been taken away, or do you feel like something's been given to you because of the freedom you have just to walk somewhere?
Yeah, I honestly think that something's been given to me because I do like cars, and I am a car aficionado. But I mean, let's be honest. Most of the time we are in our car, it's commuting, right? So most of the time it's boring traffic trying to get you to or from work. So I feel like I've been given the time to commute where I can, read or listen to a podcast or write down notes. And I don't have to worry about paying attention to where I'm going or traffic or other people or anything. And I just get to sit on the train for a while and then get off when I'm there,
Oh yeah, I felt the same way. I've had little spurts here and there in Europe, and where their public transit's a lot better than here in the US. And I felt the same way. I'm like, wow, this frees up a lot of time. And then when you do drive, it's more of a pleasure situation. Like maybe you're going karting, or maybe you rented out something for a weekend or something, just as a remembrance of what cars were. Now, do you own a car at all in New York City, or did you sell everything when you moved from Michigan to New York?
We sold everything when we moved from Michigan to New York because there's no just to park, it's insane. It's like a couple $100 a month just to pay rent for a parking spot. And it just the public transit in the cities, got problems, but it gets you where you need to go. So it didn't. We couldn't justify having the extra expense.
Yeah, I understand. You have to, you'd have to really make it as a comedian in order to, have a car in New York City, I feel.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You actually packed up and this is how we met. Mike made a post on Facebook Marketplace, and I actually still have his T300 RS wheel and pedal set, and I use it all the time. I love it. In fact, I've upgraded it, and it's just perfect for the way what I do. So that is a sim racing
I missed that thing,
It's great, and now it has an Alcantara wheel. Like, it's a nice flat bottom, and I have anyway. This isn't about me; it's about you. But yeah, so the thing is, so I met you through that, and you gave me quite a deal on it, which I'm still very thankful for. But you were in the middle of selling your entire home, and packing up everything and selling everything you could, and just getting a small place in New York with you and your at then time girlfriend.
Fiance now. Yeah,
fiance now. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So how was that move, packing up your entire life and then unpacking it in New York and saying, okay, I'm going to be a comedian now? Because that's not what your exact thing was here in Michigan, from what I remember.
No, I worked as an automotive engineer in Michigan. The move was, the hardest part about moving to New York is actually moving here. Once you're here, and you kind of get a feel for the area. It's pretty easy to pick up on everything going on, but finding an apartment when you don't live here is a nightmare. So that was a challenge. And then loading up a U-Haul and trying to park in a no parking zone, and unloading all of the furniture and boxes and stuff, and even driving a truck that size in the city was it was not only the first time I had driven in New York, but I was driving basically the smallest truck available that doesn't require a CDL. So so it was a real adventure to try to fit that thing through the streets and make sure I'm not taking any cars or bumpers with me along the way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So you drove it all the way from Michigan to New York with
Yeah.
all your stuff in it. It's a
Yeah.
pretty big truck because you can get a pretty big truck without a license. Like
Yeah.
you don't so and that's a big truck to be going through New York City streets.
Yeah, man. It was
Wow.
it was a 12-hour drive if I remember correctly. So like you're super tired and just ready to be done by the time you get into the city, and then you have to like sweat out 40
Right.
minutes of
The
of
most
city
stressful
driving.
part of your journey is the last 40 minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I'm glad you made it. I'm glad you got all set up. And you kicked off your comedy career here, but you really started doing big moves there. How has that been going for you? What's the progression been like?
Well, yeah. So I started doing some improv and sketch comedy in Ferndale, Michigan, at a place called Go Comedy,
Mhm.
and that. I mean, I've always been kind of curious on writing and comedy and performing, and then once I found Go Comedy, it really kind of took it to another level. And you know, I was close to. I've been in New York for about 2 years now, so at the time I was close to being 30, and I figured. You know, if I'm going to make the move, now's the time to make the move. And once I got here, I started taking classes and starting to get to meet people at the Pit Theater, which is a improv theater in New York City, and then also UCB, which is also an improv theater in New York City. So it, you know, the start, just like anything else, we didn't really know anybody here, and it just takes a while. It takes a while to meet people, to get out, to see what the community's like, to see what kind of opportunities there are. But I feel fairly comfortable in the community now after, you know, being here for 2 years and kind of just trial and error, trying to meet people and see what's out there.
That's great. So you felt that you're feeling at home in New York. What did you do to build community and to make that community your home?
You know, I don't think anybody has a plan. I think everyone just kind of you go see shows, you take classes, and you try to meet people to work with. You try to meet people out for drinks to see what they've worked on, what they're working on. And then you just kind of, it honestly, it feels like, it's like the first day of high school is kind of what it feels like, where you don't really know anybody, and it takes just a little bit of time to kind of, you know, kind of get the feel of who knows who, what are the relationships, what are like places to go, what are places to avoid, just, you know, and that's going to come with, it's going to come with wrong turns and you know, less than ideal shows that you do. Sometimes you'll do shows for 5 or 6 people because you don't know what's going to happen, and sometimes you do shows for 40, and
Nice.
it's just, it, you know, anywhere in between.
What is the pull to comedy for you? Because, like, you know, lots of people say, oh, you know, you could be a comedian, you should be a comedian, you're hilarious, whatever. What was it that actually said, I'm going to be a comedian?
So I use humor as a defense mechanism. Always have, always will. That's just how I work. Because I was born in Romania, and I moved to the United States when I was 11.
Uh-huh.
And I spoke, you know, I spoke pretty good English, but I had an accent at the time, and I was in elementary school, and it's like you know, I grew up in a mostly white American kind of neighborhood, so it was just like it was a really pronounced way to stick out at the time, just having an accent, being in 5th grade. So I remember very early just like just telling jokes and trying to use humor to take attention away from
From an
all the ways
accent,
that I was
right,
different, and try to use humor to connect to people, and show them that, like, yeah, you know, I have an accent. I grew up in Eastern Europe, but like, we can all laugh. You know, and sometimes that worked, and sometimes it made the target on my back bigger.
Oh, man, yeah. You know, that must have been extremely hard for someone growing, because kids are nasty, right? Like,
Yeah.
teenagers can be nasty, but kids are worse because there's no filter. They'll call it exactly like it is, and they'll make you feel like an outsider. They could also be nice, but what you remember the nasty ones the most. So I can only imagine how hard it would have been for you coming over from Romania, and I'm sure you actually have lessened your accent over the years, and you could probably turn it on and off very easily at this point. I know some of my British friends that did this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and other nationalities too. My grandparents did that. What was it about? So comedy was used as a defense mechanism, and it brought out different parts of you. And I do the same thing too. Being able to laugh about something kind of diffuses a situation. Do you remember a time, like a story that stuck with you, that you used comedy as a defense mechanism, or when you used comedy?
Oh man, you're really making me dig back into into the past, searching for. There was. So I remember. I don't remember the details specifically, but this one story was I think every month or so on like a Friday we would get like a double recess, and I remember one time. There was this kid from South Africa that was also the target of jokes and whatever from the kids, and we would both kind of hung out together because we were the targets. So like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's how we got to know each other. And we were hanging out in recess one time, and basically the kids were just starting to like imitate our accents. His accent was South African, and mine was Romanian. So then we both just started basically repeating them, what they were saying about us, but in like the most ridiculously over the top American accent we could think of. So we were, yeah, exactly. So it became noise because the more they would do it, the more we would do it, and then the more they would try to imitate us, they would end up imitating themselves. So it was kind of like just this. It was just this.
That's actually genius. Like seriously. Wow. Yeah.
It couldn't. And we were, fifth grade is what, like 11, yeah. 10, 11. And it wasn't like we were like, oh, this is going to be clever. We're going to really, really shine a light, turn a mirror. It was just like, what can we do in this moment? Okay, just imitate them. They're imitating us. We're imitating them.
That was great. But that's what comedy does, right? It holds up a mirror to the audience.
Yeah.
I think good comedy will do that. It'll make you think. And it sounds like that's kind of what you might be aiming for.
Yeah, definitely. Because, since that point, you get older, you grow up, you start to understand the world around you a little bit more. And you start to understand that, at least the way that I process, I know that I fully process the situation when I can, if it's, like a personal situation or whatever, if I can laugh at it, if I can laugh at it and crack jokes about it, no matter how serious or sad the situation is, I know that that's a signal for me that I've kind of processed it in a healthy way, because there's a lot of, I mean, especially with in the last 5 years or so with social media growing to the scale that it has, you'd think that we would try to share more positive stuff to be happier. But it seems like the stuff that really gains traction and gets spread is mostly negative. So I think I just have the kind of personality where I need to be able to laugh at it, or else it would drown me out. All the negativity would just kind of, just kind of lay a cloud all over. And I don't know, I don't know that I could live like that.
Yeah, they're also I mean, holding up a mirror and then like commenting on sadness or anger is a good way to diffuse a situation as well.
Yeah.
The brand of comedy. Now, I have not been lucky enough to be part of your, go to one of your stand-up routines, but I do see what you're doing on the Death Star News on Instagram, and I do think it's wonderfully written, and
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate the layers on these jokes, and there's subtlety there, and also social commentary, but it's also a very shareable thing. So can you tell me about like how Death Star News kind of got started?
Well, Death Star News. So I love satire. And satire is notorious. It's notoriously difficult to do well. And I think one of the best sources of comedic satire has been and is currently The Onion. They're kind of untouchable in terms of their headlines. If you want to talk, layers and just take multiple jabs within, one headline, at various power structures and institutions or whatever. So I was thinking, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, and the dualism of right and wrong is what Star Wars is about. You got dark side, light side, rebels, the Empire. Empire's basically like a fascist suppressive force, and then the rebels are people that are like, look, we just want to all be left alone and be able to like live free. So when I started trying to come up with projects where I really want to kind of improve my satire writing skills, I was sitting one day and I was like, well, Star Wars is the perfect target for a government that is like wildly out of control and oppressive, and we don't talk about really you never see the life of when they're not at war of like rebels or like everyday life of a stormtrooper. So I thought, they probably have things like healthcare clinics, different meetings or different layers of, people that work in the cafeteria, people that work kind of like the middle class of the Death Star, if you will. So it just kind of came out of knowing a lot about Star Wars and being passionate about it, and then also seeing that it kind of is a pretty good surrogate for directing satirical humor, because I didn't want to just write Onion headlines, because the Onion is the Onion and they're doing what they're doing very well, right? So I wanted to try something a little different.
I think it's a really it can be really poignant too, like, and you've been doing it for a while. Do you have writing experience when it comes to comedy prior to you doing this Death Star News thing?
Yeah, I've written a couple of sketch shows myself. I've written for a couple of sketch shows myself, and I've written a couple of TV pilots as well. And so that all happened kind of before I started Death Star News. And doing stand-up and improv, even if you're not physically sitting with a computer or a pad and paper and writing stuff down while you're doing stand-up. You never write when you're doing improv. But just doing it over and over again is practice, because you think concisely, you write concisely, you process information more concisely the more you do it. And then it just kind of translates naturally to writing on writing satire, like headlines like that for Death Star News, or writing scripts and stuff.
Wow. That's, I mean, the kind of going through the whole process. And so you started writing once you were in New York. You've gotten a couple of things that you've been working on. What projects, are there anything you can talk about in specifics at all?
Yeah, I mean, I can, none of it is, I don't have a manager or representation or anything. I'm writing this stuff basically in the hopes of getting them in front of someone to read and say, yeah, I can find this person some work. Because a lot of, when you're first starting out, and it's true for me. It's true for most of the community here and most of the community in Detroit. When you're starting out, you're doing a lot of work for free.
Yeah. Just everything.
Right?
Yeah.
Because before anyone, and art's weird like that, because it's the only career path where you're expected to do, years and years and years of free work until someone is like, okay, well, maybe now it's time to start paying. So yeah, I wrote a Brooklyn Nine-Nine spec pilot that I submitted to NBC for a writing program, and that was a lot of fun. That taught me, and I'm not going to bore you with like writing vocab or structure or whatever, but it basically taught me kind of what the a network three act sitcom structure is. And then once I had that down, I said, well, I want to write something a little bit longer. So there's this video game series called Uncharted that I really, really love. And I wrote a hour-long pilot for that, which was double the length of the half hour. And right now I'm working on a feature length, which is double the 1 hour length. So I've just kind of been picking projects that I would find exciting, but also are, because sitting back and saying, okay, I want to write a movie, what goes into my mind immediately after is, okay, so I got to go from 0 to 120 pages, and I have so many ideas, and then it just feels like you're, pulling a cardboard box from under your bed that has a bunch of junk in it that you got to sort through. So I thought starting with, 36 pages, then 60 pages, then going to 120 was kind of a natural progression,
No, that says a lot about it. Like, that was actually a strategy you started. You're like, okay, I'll start small and kind of work my way forward here.
Yeah.
That was a conscious decision you're making. And
yeah. I am still an engineer.
But that's exactly where I was going to transition into, is like that engineer part of you is shining through. What kind of engineering were you involved in?
I was doing mechanical engineering, so I was designing air induction systems for naturally aspirated engines. Actually,
Okay,
not just naturally. I was doing turbos as well.
Yeah, I mean, so that engineering muscle is something you can flex. Has that benefited you in comedy? I mean, the planning side of things, clearly, building up to that, breaking things off into small, manageable pieces, and then building up to something larger. I mean, like, SWOT, are you doing SWOT analysis on your stuff? Are you are you doing stand-up meetings with yourself? Like, yeah. So, where were
you were
we
asking
at? Okay,
how engineering fed into comedy.
Yeah. So tell me, how has engineering fed into comedy?
Well, look, and I'm sure if you ask 100 comedians, they're all going to give you 100 different answers. But for me, comedy is logic, right? Comedy comes from taking something that on the surface seems logical and then breaking that logic in a way that still makes sense. And engineering is all logic, right? So it helps me to figure out the playground that we're going to play in and figuring out what makes sense and what is like an expected pattern. And then how do I break that pattern in a way that logically still makes sense, but is releases tension, which is just, comedy. And I understand that's a very clinical way to approach comedy, but that's just how it works for me.
That's how you're functioning. You view it as A plus B equals C or some variant of that. So did that help you in like your improv stuff? Were you able to like remember names better with some weird tricks, or were you like, like you figured out the formula to yes and better? Like, how did you figure it out? Tell me about that. Okay.
So it the simple, one of the simple tricks that I use to remember names is I just think of someone that has the same name and I pictured them in the scene with me. And if I don't know someone that has that same name, I'll just think of like the first adjective that pops to mind, and I'll just picture that person in their place. So like, I don't know, like Give me a
To
name.
be. Okay,
I'll
Joe.
give you an example.
Okay, my name is Joe. How are you gonna
Okay.
remember my name?
I'm gonna pretend that for the rest of the scene, I'm just talking to a giant cup of coffee.
There you go. See,
You know what I
so
mean?
you got a mental shortcut ready to go.
Yeah. And
Oh, super smart.
none of it is like, none of it comes out. All of it stays internal to me, but it helps me in that process. And logic, in terms of improv and, yes ending and everything is logic helps me figure out what a scene needs, right? If there's like a bunch of over the top, loud, crazy characters in a scene, logic tells me that we need a voice of reason character, right? And voice of reason character is all logic. So you take the information that people give you, you like come up with a rule for it, and then you reply in a way that helps them reinforce that rule through their behavior, or add stuff that plays along to the same set of rules. And all of this, I think, because of having worked in engineering and just going even further back, the reason I went into engineering is because that's just how my brain worked to begin with. There's a reason people say that engineers kind of have a similar personality, and it's because the type of work it takes a certain way of processing information to be able to do it, just like being a therapist, you process information in a certain way that makes you more emotionally intelligent and able to relate to people. So to me, it helps because it's basically all of this stuff, because of the time I spent going through engineering school and working as an engineer. All of this stuff is kind of a background all the time, even when I'm not performing or writing, just living life. This stuff always happens, and it helps to notice patterns in people walking down the street that later might, if you approach me a certain way in a scene and it reminds me of someone's posture walking down the street, then it allows my character to walk with that posture, and that informs different decisions. And it's all kind of, you can trace a logical connection between all of them.
So yeah, it's a progression. You're always building off of that. You know what? I've talked to lots of comedians, and not on the show, but hopefully I'll be able to speak to more. But I feel like you have a very unique approach to this. And do you see very many like engineers that went into comedy, or who do you see getting into your space here other than people like you?
I'll be honest. I don't see any engineers, and I think it's because look, engineers are well paid,
and
it takes a specific kind of insane person to go from a well-paying job to a future that is uncertain. Even if you end up being successful and are able to support yourself financially, being an artist, that insecurity never goes away, because you're never sure when the next opportunity will come.
I feel like the courage that you had to just drop a well-paid job in, your suburban area, which, I went to your house to pick up the stuff. It was a nice place. Like you kind of took, you could have had a 401k. You could have had all these different things. Is there a time where you're doubting this at all, or do you see some light at the end of the tunnel, or are you able to be stopped? Tell me about what you're thinking.
I doubt it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. But I think if I didn't have the doubt, I wouldn't want it as bad. You know what I mean? I think the doubt, that doubt is kind of like a boogeyman that just kind of chases you a little bit all the time.
Yes.
Towards taking risks and kind of putting yourself out there and trusting that no artist was born. Every artist had a growth period, right? Across all mediums. No artist was born fully formed, and no artist reached a stage where they were like, okay, I'm fully formed and now I'm just going to coast, because they pretty quickly become irrelevant, right? To this fear and this kind of uncertainty, I think is a direct connection to the state of people, the state of people, the state of society, the state of the world, and that to have kind of your finger on that, you got to be a little bit uncomfortable. You know?
So what lets you make the jump from being a logical person designing, air intake systems or whatever it was for engines to going into comedy? Where did the A and B and C, and how did this all add up and say, you know what, I got to do it? You alluded to it. You were turning 30 and you're like, I have to do something now. What tell me about that decision process.
I found I got really lucky and found an incredible partner in my fiance. She's been nothing but extremely supportive and encouraging, and a real rock to lean on. And the steps early on were basically, we bought that house together, we fixed it up, right? And her sister had moved out here a year or so before us. And she had never lived outside of Southeast Michigan and wanted to try something new. I've always wanted to live in New York. And once her sister moved, the conversation kind of started about, we could do it for a couple of years. We don't have kids. We're not planning on having kids anytime soon. If we're going to do it at any point, now would be the time.
Right.
And throughout all this, we were fixing up the house. We completely renovated the interior, and a couple months worth of discussion kind of in March, April of 2018. And we said, look, let's just meet with the realtor, see what we could list the house for. We listed the house for a great price. It was going to be enough to pay off both of our student loans. And
awesome.
Then it just kind of became, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to list it. And then the house sold. Then we paid off our student loans. Then I flew out here for 2 weeks, looked for an apartment, found an apartment. Then I flew back. Then we packed up the U-Haul and we came. And we were lucky enough to be in a position where we don't have debt or anything. And it's because I was able to rely on Leah so heavily. And she kind of gave me the courage to sort of quiet down the doubts enough that it made me feel like, okay, we go and this whole thing blows up in my face. Who cares? We move back, we move somewhere else, we try something different, because I had the safety and the security inside to know that I didn't have to do it alone. And that was huge, Yeah.
That is huge. It sounds like you found an amazing partner. So congratulations on that. I know she's your fiance now, so you're locking it down. Very important. So you get that long-term security. It's very good. It's probably great for your anxiety and doubt. That's also really great. I'm super excited for the plan. So what is, like, do you think the 11-year-old or that fifth grade version of you would be proud or happy where you're at now?
Oh, you know what? That's a good question. I think so. I don't think I had this kind of self-awareness at the time being a fifth grader. I don't think any fifth graders have any self-awareness.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That would actually be really weird. I'm like, what did you do? Have some sort of time travel spell? Like, what happened?
But I'd like to think that the person that I was back then, which was very guarded and tried to blend in as much as possible and not stand out as much as possible, I think that hopefully that person seeing me today would be like, oh, look, there's a world where you can be weird and you can take the parts of you that are different, or that the way that your brain works differently than other people's, and really shine a light on that and let that guide who you are in life, instead of trying to hold it back, because we're all better off knowing people that are being authentic. It makes for a much richer experience. We don't all want to be the same. That's boring as hell. You know, if you walk down the street and every single person that you see is wearing the same thing, acting the same way, talking the same way, thinking the same way, what's the point at that point, you know?
Oh, I get it. That's awesome. I'm glad you're self-aware enough to understand what that motivation is that's driving you. Well, if you weren't doing comedy and you weren't into, we didn't talk about cars at all. So if you weren't doing engineering or comedy, what would you be doing?
Oh man, if I wasn't doing engineering or comedy, what would I be doing? I mean, for a while, I thought that my path was going to be. I really wanted to work as an engineer, as crew for an F1 team.
Hell
yeah!
Yeah!
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a mechanic for Renault specifically, but I guess I would take AMG Petronas too. That
yeah, okay.
If they're gonna give it to me, like whatever, I'll accept it.
What if it was Williams and Williams was like, Claire like came up to you and was like, I really need an engineer comedian on my team.
Look, man, at that point I'll do whoever, you know what I mean? We're talking 12 teams of the best engineers in the entire world. Like even the team that's finishing bottom consistently is like such an exclusive team to be a part of.
They still have some of the fastest pit stops on record. Like they're consistently great at pit stops. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're an F1 fan too. I'm so happy that we had the chance to talk. Where can the people find you?
My Instagram is Raul Mags, because my first real name is Raul.
Oh my God! And I'm over here calling you Mike.
No, that
Maghiar.
Look, that's a leftover. That's one of the changes that stuck with me. I remember nobody in Michigan being able to pronounce Raul when I was younger, and I just had started having them call me Mike. And that's still stuck, and I go by Mike here too. So no worries at all.
Oh my gosh! Like I'm over here calling you the most like Indiana name possible. When I met Mike on the stream before this, dear listeners, I said Mike. I don't even remember what I said. Maghiar. He's like, oh, it's Maghiar. I'm like, oh, cool. I love Maghiar. Like that's such a way, but it's actually Raul Maghiar. That's such a powerful name, man. Like that's cool.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm awesome. Still working my way to fully adapting that identity. You know, that was it's a process.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it took me a long time to adapt my middle name, which is Quinto, which was my grandfather's name. I was so scared of that for so long, and now it's like the Q is like a really important part of this show's name, and then also I identify with it. So it's like, you gotta embrace that stuff. That's awesome.
For sure.
What a great conversation. It was so awesome. I mean, really, I'm grateful that you made the time and kind of took a chance, because I was just kind of messaging you on Facebook and stuff like, hey man, come on the show, let's do an interview. But I'm really happy we had the chance to do it. Thank you so much for coming on. And definitely go check out Death Star News over on Instagram. And I wish you so well. Like, I am sending the good vibes right now.
Thank you, man. Good vibes, absolutely received, internalized, and processed. You know what I mean? I appreciate you having me on. It was great talking to you and getting to know you a little bit better, because we like you said, our really only interaction was like 15-minute chat when we had the steering wheel exchange.
Incredible. And it turns out to be an incredible interview. That is serendipity at its finest. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Joe Q Car Show. To gain access to our exclusive after show, known as Reaction Time, cleverly named, I know, head over to patreon.com/JoeQCar, and you'll get to hear our behind-the-scenes thoughts, get some follow-up questions, get some tidbits we left out of the show as little extras. And in addition to the Reaction Time after show, you'll also receive a bunch of other benefits. You'll get behind-the-scenes updates, maybe some stickers, advance notice of who's coming on the show. You could even hang out with me if you're at that tier. There's a bunch of different things. Please go check them out. It's all at patreon.com/JoeQCar. Thank you so much for listening. I can talk all day, so until next time, goodbye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's go. This is the Joe Q Car Show. Right now I got a full tank, so if you ready, we can hit the road. Ayy. Old school, it's the best. Mixtapes on cassettes, keep the rims so fresh. Yeah, electric cars, yeah, they the bomb. Racing cars, Formula One, we love it all. So if you love the episode, come back for another.